So I'm going to start off with a short history of the involvement of the Jewish extremists in the destruction of America. One thing they've done is they've worked tirelessly for the destruction of European homogeneity, both in the United States and Europe. It's hard to believe, but 1965, America was essentially 90% European society in terms of its population. And of course, Europe was just about 99% of European extraction. Now those numbers are rapidly dropping, and the effort to break down the borders were dominated by Jews, many of whom happened to be extreme Zionists. The American Jewish Committee, which first vigorously advocated for open immigration, beginning in 1914 until the Great Watershed in 1965, and up until the present day, still do. The politicians behind the open immigration law of 65 included Senator Jacob Javits, Congressman Emanuel Seller, Leo Pfeiffer, former president of the American Jewish Congress, Norman Podhoretz, writer and member of the Council on Foreign Relations, former leftist, now Jewish neocon, Senator Charles Schumer, and Representative Elizabeth Holtzman. Of course, Schumer and Holtzman were later on. The main author of the Civil Rights Act of 64 was the Jewish Assistant Attorney General Norbert Schley, and he also wrote the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Jewish extremist Arnold Aronson was founder and leader of a leadership conference on civil rights. The LCCR was a powerful coalition of political and religious groups that organized major countrywide lobbying efforts to aid passage of the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act of 64 wasn't really about human rights and civil rights. It was truly about the displacement and the destruction of any sort of unity among European Americans. For instance, it has led directly to discrimination against European Americans in jobs, promotions, scholarships, contracting, and many other ways. Now, these double standards have been going on since the start. It was the American Jewish Committee which filed amicus curiae, Friends of the Court briefs to overturn so-called racial discriminatory statutes. They also filed briefs supporting these programs of affirmative action. We can look at the ADL, which is a big, powerful organization that's worked against European Americans. They also, of course, have supported Israel. We can look at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, who's worked against any sort of recognition of the Jewish problem. At the same time, they've supported the Zionist state of Israel. For that matter, we can look at Elie Wiesel, the high priest of the Holocaust, who's also worked for any sort of destruction of European heritage while he supported Israel. We can look at groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center. He was actually started in part by a Gentile, but he was born into a very philo-Semitic family who gave his Jewish name after Joseph Seligman, President Lincoln's Jewish banker. The center's most well-known activists are Mark Potok and Heidi Beirich, both Jewish. The SPLC has a long-standing reputation for manipulating statistics and exaggerating the extent of racism, and the group earns millions a year by making false claims about hate groups and the dangers they pose to America. If you take a look at 21 members of the senior staff, 12 are Jews. That makes a numerical representation of 57%, and they're actually 2% of the U.S. population. That's a factor of 2,800% higher represented than they should be by the population. We can give you some names. Richard Cohen is president and CEO, $351,000. Joseph Levin is general counsel, $191,000 a year. Bronstein, Bauer, just goes on and on and on, ladies and gentlemen. So we have an ethnic group which has worked to destroy the dominant European control of America, and in turn, they've controlled our politics. They control our international banking. A perfect example is Goldman Sachs. A perfect example is how they run the Federal Reserve. And they control our media, and that's the reason why we have a Mideast policy that supports Israel while supportive of the terrible crimes against the Palestinians. A lot of people just have a negative feeling toward Europeans.
What do you mean we're lucky to be white?
It's not luck, it's privilege.
We're privileged because society was set up for us.
We're privileged, and that's unfair.
A lot of Europeans are taught to feel that Europeans are very bad people. I mean, they discriminated against blacks, or they had slavery, they conquered the Indians. Every race has had slavery. Every race has conquered other peoples. Every race. There is no unique evil about the white race. But certainly all decent people of the world agree that every people should have a right to control their own societies and preserve those unique distinctions that make humanity what it is. And when we destroy the many and we have the destruction of globalism, where everybody's supposed to listen to the same music, the same junk TV, the same junk movies, eat the same junk food. This is damaging to human freedom. It's a new imperialism, and if we don't understand the Jewish role in this, we can't fight it.